in all different ways, this is a worldwide blitz on farmers. In the food wholesale supply side, there is now 72% less food floating around the planet than there was pre-pandemic.
That's a recipe for a famine.
If you grow wheat on a farm, so you earn £160 an acre, or they'll pay you to plant pretty flowers under the set-aside schemes and pay you £300 to £400 an acre to do nothing.
So you save time and you get more money, and then there's less food. So then there's the land being given over for solar farms, prime agricultural land. Yep. There's the sanctions on urea and fertilizer from Belarus and Russia. I didn't know about the seeds being manipulated in such a way that you need more fertilizer, which is now more expensive. Then there's the changes to building regulations, making it easier for the government to force people to sell their land, to sell their homes in order to build on agricultural land. So we have less and less land available for farming.
They are dumping all the milk. Well, they milk the cows and then tip it down the drains. Millions of litres on a daily basis across the country. There's plenty of milk. And if you're then in 10, 12 days, you've got £100,000+ gone down the drain with no way of getting that money back. And this is deliberate to smash the industry. People don't realise yet, but within the next 6 months, we're going to have a huge food crisis. When I went to school, carbon was the gas of life. And we were taught, when we did chemistry, it was a big thing. What we were taught about was the photosynthesis and how it all worked. If we have more carbon dioxide, we have more food on the planet.
So there are people who just believe the carbon dioxide is bad for us. They just believe mantra because they've never questioned it. Cow fart's already bad for the planet, but mining for metals, making munitions, sending them across the planet to drop on people in foreign lands, that's carbon neutral apparently.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.
When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes a duty. So said Thomas Jefferson. Go to bit.ly/lawful tax protest or bit.ly/make-war-history and find out why it is a criminal offence to pay central government or local government taxes in the UK. And let's make war history. There is stuff going on in the UK, in Ireland, in Europe, and possibly also in New Zealand and Australia and Canada, and under the Biden regime in the United States, where our food supply is being destroyed. That's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. Hey, Mark, thank you so much for making yourself available. You are the bowler-hatted farmer.
The bowler hat farmer, yes, indeed.
The bowler hat farmer. And you've got a channel and you're on X, and I'll have the links in the description below. I can see you're wearing a bowler hat. This is true. But where's the farm?
Well, the farm's back in Suffolk, but we will be leaving the farm we're on at present and looking for a new place somewhere else in the UK later this year. So that's our quest while we're on our tour, is to next find where we fit in and how we're going to develop the food system. I've also had the epiphany point that whilst I love growing food, I've probably got a bigger part to play in the new food system that's going to be born out of the carnage what's going on at present. So
okay, well, we will come to the new food system. I'm interested in that. But just say a little bit about your history as a farmer. I can let you know, I'm a child protection social worker. I was brought up in London. Right, I live in a city out in the southeast of England. I mean, I think farming is good because it gives me food, but I know nothing about it.
Okay, well, from a child protection point of view, let me just give you a bit of a background. So, at 5 years old, I was a little bit of a beggar and wouldn't go to school. So my grandfather there would be a bribe where my grandfather would say, well, if you do this, you're going to have to do that. And so he asked me one day, he said, do you know where the picnic field is? I said, yes, Granddad. And with that, he picked me up and put me on top of the shoulders of a cow and said, right, ride the cow down to the picnic field. And so he smacked the cow on the backside. The cow took off down the field with me on the shoulders, with 500 other cows following, at 5 years old. And, we walked down to the picnic field. The cow walked right around the field and came back to the gate and pushed the gate, closing the gate on the 500 cows that were then in the field. So just that gives you an idea of, from my side, how far my farming side goes back.
Fabulous.
I put myself through agricultural university, realised that after 2 years, they hadn't taught me anything I actually needed to know. It was all chemical based and, big agri based, and it went against everything I'd been shown by my granddad. So I then set myself up in a market garden and got into the fruit and veg wholesale business, and that's what the predominance of my business is now. And the produce we grow as an organic veg farmer goes into the wholesale fruit and veg company, which then supplies out to restaurants, cafes, and things.
Okay, great. And I imagine your grandfather, well, his father was a farmer, and so on and so on.
Yeah, generations deep.
Generations. Yeah. Okay. And by the way, I didn't mention this to you, but my kids never went to school. But we didn't have a cow in the city that we brought them up in.
School, I've got to be honest, if I was going through having my children again, they wouldn't go anywhere near a school. And it's, only the recent years I've kind of come to understand just how damaging, let's say, the system is towards children's education.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's not, I mean, the thing for me, I was born in Pakistan. My family are from, my parents were born in what is now India. And one of the things that always puzzled me is, why did the British bring schools to India? Because empire wasn't an exercise in philanthropy.
It's interesting you raise that question, because my partner's Nigerian, and she asked the very same question.
Yes. The British didn't come to Nigeria. They didn't Nigeria and India because they wanted an educated populace. No. They wanted a well-trained, obedient, compliant, conformist population that would later on in life, at some point, roll their sleeves up without question and take in an experimental injection because the TV man and the TV said so. Okay. Yeah. Luckily, we didn't do that. Now, you're involved in a tour. Do you want to say something about that? What is this tour?
Yeah, sure. So from my side, very disillusioned with the whole governmental system, what they're trying to put in place to break the farmers, whether it's inheritance tax or whatever it might be. They're all just different ruses under, an agenda to break the farmers. For me, I decided 6 months ago to take my plight as a farmer on tour, to talk all around the country about what was going on, how it's been delivered, and how we could then suggest at putting in a new food system. And I went and did a couple of talks and put it online, and other people then contacted me, and we've got over 100 talks to do across the UK now.
Oh, wow.
So we've just done the whole of the West Country, Somerset, Exeter, right down to Truro. We visited Land's End yesterday. We're now back to Bodmin. Tomorrow, Barnstable. Then we go back to Somerton to do another speech because I couldn't all get in the first one. And then we're heading up to Burnley, then down to Derbyshire, then across to Lincolnshire. So there's just massive audience. We're getting 200-300 people at some of these events, which, yes, they're an awake audience, but they're also a very concerned audience about where we are, at present with the food supply. So I think it's waking the community up.
Great. Okay. Now, on these tours, you're talking. What is it you're talking about? And also, how can people find out information about the tours if they're somewhere in the UK and they want to come to one of these?
Yeah, sure. So not all of them are listed, I have to say at this point, because we're still adding new dates. But if you go to the bowlerhatfarmer.com and click on the tour button, you'll see all of the posters on there of all the tours we're doing across the UK. So the fundamental speeches, I talk about how I got into farming, and how sadly I have to accept this, that for 40 years now I've been in the food industry, and for 40 years how I've seen the wholesale food industry change. How, and like you said at the beginning, we like to think about this in terms of, is this only a UK problem? Ireland, Europe. We're getting emails on a daily basis from countries far as, in Africa, in India, in South America, that are also going through the same thing. So in all different ways, this is a worldwide blitz on farmers.
Wow.
And whether they're talking to us because, in the food wholesale supply side, there is now 72% less food floating around the planet than there was pre-pandemic. Just to give you an idea of how mucked up the food supply chain is now and how fragile it is. 72% less food physically traveling around the planet, waiting to land on people's plates.
That's a recipe for a famine.
Absolutely, and not just here, worldwide. And that's what we need to understand in what's going on. This agenda is very deep, very dark. And when we've spoken in the past about the 2030 agenda and what the WEF's policy on only ending up with 500 million people out of the 8 billion people on the planet. I was always the first one. And when I very first got told about the 2030 agenda, I was just 21 years old and was adamant this would never come into play because farmers would always want to farm. You'll never stop farmers wanting to farm. But then you see what they're doing with the inheritance tax, what they've done to pay farmers to produce pretty flowers, plant trees, anything apart from planting food. Then you start looking at the things like building land, what's taken away agricultural land, whether it's solar fields, whatever it might be, sucking up slowly across the world. Then we've got, seed manipulation by the likes of Bill Gates and different people. So we're in a position that lots of things have come together to change how we farmed in the past.
Okay.
So what we're now starting to see is that whole change.
Right. Okay. Well, Mark, I know that there are ways that the British government and the European government and Irish governments are doing to destroy farming. And you mentioned some of those, right? So let's run through those so people are aware. So one is paying farmers not to grow food, but paying them to grow flowers, or to let the rewilding, is it 10% or 20% of the land must be devoted to rewilding?
Yeah, so I mean, it varies in different parts of the country in accordance to what they're farming already. But just to give you an idea, if you grow wheat on a farm, you grow 4 tonne per acre, and it earns, after paying for all the chemicals and fertilisers, £40 per tonne. So you earn £160 an acre, and you've got to have all the time invested into drilling, spraying, cultivating, rolling, respraying, refertilising, right down to the point of cropping. Or they'll pay you to plant pretty flowers under the set-aside schemes and pay you £300 to £400 an acre to do nothing. Drill it and leave it to get on with it.
So you save time and you get more money, and then there's less food, right?
Oh, there's less food.
It's a bribe to not farm.
Absolutely. Now, you've also got on the other side, there's also a thing called a get out of farming payment scheme.
Yes.
So if you're a farmer that's over 60 and you don't want to hand the farm on to anybody else, or don't have anyone else to hand it on to, they'll pay you. I've got to be honest, I forget what it is now, but it's hundreds of thousands to get out of farming.
Yeah, no, I've seen that on the government website myself, right?
So, they've got this in place, and then obviously BlackRock comes in and buys the farm up, and, the likes of Vanguard and so forth, buying up all those farms and being in a position that they then control that land.
Yep.
Now, if you want to, and I've always said from day one, if you want to control the price of food, control the land, because the quickest way to cause a population starvation is just not grow anything. So farmers have always been great at adapting. Whether we've got chickens on the farm one year, pigs the next year, cows the next year, and we'll diversify really quickly. If we need to set vegetables against wheat, whatever it might be. One, that the livestock is no longer there because that's all getting destroyed slowly as this nonsense is coming into play under the global, net zero effect. Thank you. So we've got that coming into play, and we've also got coming into play the other side that the seeds have been messed about with, the fertilizers have been reduced. How do we then grow or produce anything? So it's when you look at the whole picture that you start to understand what's actually going on.
Okay, so let me carry on running through. So then there's the land being given over for solar farms, prime agricultural land.
Yep.
There's the sanctions on urea and fertilizer from Belarus and Russia, making it's got way more expensive the last few years. I didn't know about the seeds being manipulated, but I suppose in such a way that you need more fertilizer, which is now more expensive. Then there's the changes to building regulations, making it easier for the government to force people to sell their land, to sell their homes in order to build on agricultural land. So we have less and less land available for farming. And then the other part of that, right? And as I wasn't born here. I'm an immigrant, right? But I came here because my father had a job. He was interviewed. He was vetted. He came with his mum with my mum, right? Not his mum. And my brother and my sister, which is distinct from what's been happening these last few years where we have mostly male Muslim migrants. I'm Muslim, but coming in, there's no jobs for them. And we have a housing crisis because the resources haven't expanded. In fact, the resources are contracting. So you have a larger population competing for smaller resources, which is a recipe for conflict. And therefore, we need more government control, like digital IDs. Nice one, Tony Blair. Right. And of course, by the way, Mark, if I say that I'm against open borders and I think people should be vetted before they come in and there should be jobs waiting for them, of course, I'm a white supremacist, transphobic, racist, right wing.
It's interesting you say that because obviously my partner's Nigerian. she's come into the country on paperwork, come into the UK. We've then done an application to stay once we've met. And because she's a black Christian woman, she doesn't fit the criteria. So, 8 months on after them saying to her, we'll take your passport away from you because, you might disappear. 8 months on, she's not allowed to claim any benefits and she's not allowed to work until they give her permission to. So that puts people coming into the country in a very vulnerable position.
Yeah, it does.
If you come in, and I'm not racist, it's a job of a black girlfriend to be racist. So for me, but the very big difference in between a Christian coloured girl coming into the country and a Muslim male is on two different playing fields.
Oh, yeah, and it's just a recipe for conflict and to erode Christian culture, because you erode a nation's culture, then the people become easier to rule. They have nothing to anchor themselves by, and they don't have any food. So, of course, we'll turn to the government. Please feed us. And what you're talking about is something that has been done before by the Maoists, and also Holodomor by Stalin in Ukraine, where they starved the Ukrainian people by denying them access to farming. And then the other way that they're destroying farming is through the changes in the tax rules, inheritance tax. But isn't it the case, I read it in The Guardian, that farmers, you're one of the landed gentry, you own half of Scotland or something.
I think the reality of what people think farmers are and what farmers actually are is very different to start with. I mean, we've just been travelling down Cornwall, and most of the farmers that we've met, the IHT will literally bury them. And there is no way that 90% of the farmers will survive the next 10 years of the transition. Now, the problem is in their rims that one of the things that I've seen travelling around the country isn't the problem isn't in the farmers don't want to pay the IHT. The problem is that the farmers can't pay it because the food simply isn't valued at the right money. So if a farmer sells a cow and it comes to £3,000, he can take a good profit out of that cow and put some in the bank. Now, the problem is that he can't carry that money forward year on year on year because you're going to pay income tax on it every year. So you then get to the end that you've paid, if it was 10 years' time and the dad dies and wants to hand the farm down, in that time they may well have been in a position to earn good money, but they've not been able to save any because they've got to pay the income tax on it. Now, farmers are not adverse to paying income tax. I get lots of people put snide comments on social media when I post videos about it, and they say, farmers don't pay any tax. I pay my taxes. I pay every tax there is to pay. I probably pay more tax than most people who write those stupid comments. The IHT is a completely different thing because you're being taxed on an asset that has no value to you unless you sell it. So it's like, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And there isn't the cash flow within farming, and it's variable. And the other thing that it does, and I'm sure you're well aware of this, is the loss of knowledge. The inherited knowledge, the experiential knowledge that you got from that first cow ride when you were 5 years old.
Yeah.
Right? They're completely lost. And then it's generational knowledge. Because you'll be able to, I bet you could see things in the clouds and in the landscape that I wouldn't notice. And that would take me, I don't know, several generations to even begin to discern.
Yeah. I mean, for someone like myself, I'm going to be honest and say that for me, I floated in and out of farming. Right. Because of the nature of my business with the fruit and veg wholesale side. I had my own farm for 10 years, produced lots of vegetables. Had 6 months out, went back to the family farm, my uncle's farm, and started growing there. Now, sadly, he's died. We're off again. This treadmill continues, but the knowledge travels with you, and that's the thing where we're now going to see the problem. Now is that the younger generation coming into farming, they only know what the universities are teaching them,
right?
And that is a recipe for disaster. I can absolutely assure you.
Yeah.
One of the things, just to tell you briefly, and one of the things we're doing within the tour is we've been gifted some land in Scotland, and we're going to turn that into a training facility through our CIC side, where we will train youngsters who want to get into regenerative and organic farming. We'll actually be able to train them how to do the job properly before they go off and think about getting a site of their own. So I think there's lots of things moving forward in the future that will benefit, the farming community.
Okay, all right. Now, what you said about universities teaching people useless stuff, I completely get it. And I've noticed a change for myself as a social worker because I qualified 30 odd years ago. And the students coming out now, They know nothing about structural inequality. I mean, the course I did was very political, but it's been completely depoliticized. I told you my children never went to school. So my son bought Bitcoin when he was 11. He understands money. He goes to college against my advice, does economics, and he's saying, the economics teacher doesn't know how money works. And he's teaching rubbish. He talks about currency as if it was money, which, by the way, I invite people to look into. Gold, silver, and Bitcoin, those are money. The pound, the euro, the dollar, it's not money.
Yeah, no. I'm a lover of XRP.
Oh, you know a bit about it. Okay, fair enough. Yes, every crypto has its own fans.
That's right.
I'm agnostic. I have them all, but you should always have some Bitcoin. Always have some.
Yeah,
you should always have some gold.
Yeah, I've got all things, but XRP is my favourite for the future.
All right. Okay.
Inside knowledge.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Now, you talked about new solutions, a new way of growing food, and obviously, you're heavily invested in Bill Gates' insect farms, and I think you're destroying the food industry so that we can all eat that poisonous chitin that can't be cooked out, and there are parasites in insects that we have no defenses to.
Yeah.
But it is cheap and it does save the planet. Oh, that's the other thing. The way that they're destroying farming is through just culling herds.
Yeah.
Culling the livestock, and then you don't have natural fertilizers through their poo. And then you become more dependent upon fertilizer imports, which aren't going to be allowed in anymore because of the carbon footprint of those fertilizers.
Yeah.
And then the Bovaer additive, which I understand is reducing the milk supply. Cows don't like it. It's slowly going to kill them off. It's going into the land. So then obviously the solution is to eat more bugs. Is it not, Mark?
Okay. I'll tell you a little story about what's going on at the moment, and people might not be aware about this. The videos have gone out today, and I've certainly shared it on my Facebook. The farmers that are under Muller contracts, just to give you an idea on something, they are dumping all the milk. Muller haven't collected it for 12 days. They're not paying them. They've not confirmed they're going to pay them.
For people who don't know, Muller's a big agribusiness.
Yeah, a big agribusiness. So it's part of the Arla system.
Right.
We know that Arla have been pushing Bovaer.
Yeah, Bovaer, for people who don't know, is a food additive. It's designed to make cows fart less, but there's concerns that Mark and I share that it's carcinogenic and it's poisonous. And then one of the things I know, Mark, about abuse, and you'll have seen this, right? The abusers are always doing this for our own good. It's always sugar-coated, right? It's always for our benefit. Meanwhile, they're poisoning our food supply. Please carry on.
Absolutely. Well, so what we're seeing is that with the Muller dairies, for some reason, they've come up with the excuse this time that their drying plant, where they make their powdered milk from, for whether that's baby's milk or powdered milk, the drying plant isn't working. So for 12 days, they haven't collected from the dairies. So now the dairies have to milk cows. There is no option on that. Twice a day, cows need milking or they're going to get ill. So they milk the cows and then tip it down the drains. Millions of litres on a daily basis across the country. And then people have been told that we've got no milk. There's plenty of milk. We're dumping it. People need to be aware of what's going on. And this is, we've shared the videos today from some of these farmers, and these farmers are in tears because they just don't know what to do, because Muller won't even reply. They don't even have the courtesy to reply to the farmers, and they're under contract, so they cannot sell it anywhere else.
And then that's also loss of income.
Yeah.
And they're using up all energy and resources and electricity and getting no revenue, so they're being slowly...
just to give you an idea, a litre of milk is worth 46 pence, okay, to the farmer. So let's call that 50p. For argument's sake, let's call it 50 pence. If you're a farmer and you produce, 20,000 litres a day, that's nigh on £10,000 a day you're tipping down the drain with no way of getting that money back. And if you're then in 10, 12 days, you've got £100,000+ gone down the drain with no way of getting that money back. This is what we're up against, and this is deliberate to smash the industry.
Absolutely.
I don't know your thoughts on the Bovaer side, and I actually came up with a thought set with Bovaer that it was all planned to start with. Arla want to get out of the dairy industry, and they don't care because they control all the almond milk, they control all the coconut milk, they control all the oat milk, right? If you can call that stuff milk, right?
Well, I know those aren't mammals. Almonds are not mammals. They do not suckle their young, and it's highly processed fake food.
So what we're seeing is that I believe that they dropped the Bovia bombshell deliberately to drop the consumption of milk. Right? And they deliberately did it, and they deliberately then stepped into the plate that they would say, and then not want to give any major answers for 10 days, 12 days, to do horrendous damage to the guys on the ground.
Yeah, and then replace it with processed fake food substitutes that they control the supply of, and that they can profit from.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then the other thing about milk is that it's a food staple. It's in so many ingredients. You get butter from it, cheeses, all sorts of things, plus also, cakes and everything, right? Because all the food that butter's in, all the food that relies on cheese. And the other food staple that's being assaulted is eggs because of
hugely.
Bird flu.
Well, I don't know if you're aware of this, but my belief is, and I think I'm pretty on the ball with this, to be honest, this autumn is when they will have, by the end of 2025, we talk about a 2030 agenda, it's not, it's a 2025 agenda, it's been slid forward. By the end of 2025, we will have a huge issue with meat. Now, the issue will be, 1, we will have TB, 2, we will have bird flu, and 3, we will then, all these various illnesses, what they come up and tell us, are on the cards, will all then come to fruition. This, my belief is, this winter, and as a result, they will cull vast amounts of animals. Now, I covered this on my channel, I don't know, maybe 2.5 months ago. I had a message from a friend after I spoke about the Bovia side and things, and he said to me, Mark, I was involved heavily in the culling of, during the BSE campaign, when we lost all the cows. He said, and I was involved in the culling of that as a marksman. I said, yeah. He said, I've had a call from Defra to ask me, will I go back on a new team for later this year? So I put it out on social media, and sure enough, then I had 2 guys contact me who both import large amounts of logs into the UK, who said that they'd also been asked to start importing timber to burn the cattle. We haven't even got a pandemic, so how can they know what's coming if we don't have an issue?
Yeah.
So I think we know what's coming. This winter, the farmers are going to really have to fight back hard.
Yeah. And not just the farmers, all of us, because we all rely on the farmers. No farmers, no food. So, and we don't have a pandemic coming. We have a scamdemic coming, just like the previous one, where they used the dodgy PCR test, which is not a diagnostic tool, to be able to determine, oh, you're sick, therefore you need to have an injection. Same deal with the bird flu. And I know something else that goes in, which is they're talking about a meat tax.
Oh yeah,
meat more expensive.
They keep bringing out different things. They bring out anything to. You imagine, Rims, if they're in a position that they bring out 100 of these stupid policies, and every one of them has a 0.5% detriment on the industry. Then after they've launched 100 of them over the course of 12 months, they come to the end of the year and they've damaged half the industry. Now what we are seeing is it's forcing the price of meat up. Does that do the consumer any good? No. Does it do the farmer any good? Well, not really long term. And here's an issue, because stock's been worth so much money that the farmers are getting rid of all of their stock because they're seeing it as a great opportunity of a cash cow. So classic example, that a cow, if you take a beef cow, a year ago was not even worth £2,000. Now it's worth £3,000. So the farmers are not only prepared to sell their stock that they've bred this year, they're also prepared to get rid of the ones what they normally keep for breeding, because they're still in the belief that they're going to, in turn, after getting rid of all the animals, be able to buy back in young suckling cows and bulls that they'll be then to breed from. But they won't, because they're all getting bought up by the likes of Bill Gates and disappearing off the planet. So they're all getting chucked in the food supply chain, and they're all then disappearing. And this is something which is, people don't realise yet, but within the next 6 months, we're going to have a huge, huge food crisis.
Oh God! All right. Well, what about organic farms? What's happening with them?
Yeah. Now there lies a different story. So we've been travelling the country, visiting lots of farmers, and one of the things we're seeing is that the organic farmers are stepping up to the plate. Now, when I say organic, what I mean is chemical free, not necessarily certified, because I'm not a certified organic grower, because I do not believe in paying £500 a year for someone to give me a certificate to tell me what I'm doing. It's just nonsense. So with the Soil Association and people like that, again, they're just limited companies. It's just another scam.
They're probably captured just like every other organisation has been captured.
They're all limited companies.
Yeah.
It's the same as Red Tractor, for instance. Red Tractor don't want to accept that farm washing goes on, where they import vegetables into the country, into wholesalers. I don't know if you know about this. Okay, let me tell you about farm washing. So
Farm washing. This
could
I know
be,
about money laundering.
it's a similar thing.
Okay.
So what happens is they import meat or vegetables or dairy. They bring it to the UK in wholesale companies. They then supply it into farms who pack it as their own produce. Okay? And I blew the whistle on this back in the summer, and Red Tractor were straight on my case telling me how bad I was. And I said, okay, well, I'll do an apology video. And I did an apology video for 10 minutes. And then at the end, I just added one sentence was, obviously, if you're working in a pack house or on a farm and you have seen this going on, please let us know. They had hundreds of people contacting them from all over the country telling them what scams were going on. So they backed down after that and didn't want to talk to me. But this is a big issue because it's again, just desecrates British farming and what the value of the product is. Because if you go into supermarkets, there'll be shelves and shelves full of meat, and across the top of the shelves, it'll have big Union Jacks, big flowing countryside images, British animals on the posters, and then you get down to it and you pick up a joint of pork and it says packed in the UK.
Packed, but not produced.
Not produced.
Yeah, that's the difference.
New Zealand lamb with Union Jack on it, because it was packed in the UK, they can then rebrand it. So the consumers have got to wake up to what's going on, and the farmers have got to wake up to what's going on and see how they can work directly, in my opinion, in a more direct line with the public.
Yeah.
Cut the supermarkets out.
Yeah. Now, before we go into the organic farms again, right? Another assault on food supply is regulatory bureaucratic assault, that you should spend hours and hours and hours filling in forms to make sure that you meet with all sorts of regulatory criteria versus out in the field.
DEFRA is the farmer's worst enemy, I have to say. They have now got a level of bureaucracy in place that is so ridiculous, you just can't comprehend. I mean, I'll give you an idea. So pre-Christmas, I raised 50 turkeys. Mm-hmm. And for me to have them on the holding number, the limit was you could only have the turkeys on there if you had not registered, if you had 50 birds or above. So we had 49 turkeys and one who identified as a fox. And that way, we didn't need to register them, okay?
Yeah, fair enough. Makes complete sense.
Because of people like me, they then changed the policy to one bird every application. You had to register every single bird. Now, the reason that came into play and the reason that the public were involved, and they said, well, if you've got chickens in your garden, you need to register, was because if you've got a chicken farm, let's say, and the nearest chicken farm to it is 25 miles away, and you're DEFRA and you're looking for an excuse to cull the animals, you've got to get the disease, the alleged disease, from one farm to the other. Now, they couldn't do that because they could never prove the 25-mile journey of the wild birds. Now, if you now register every garden in between those 25 miles of the farms, you can then turn around and say, okay, well, we think it started in this farm, and Molly Mop down the road, she got it, and then it went to Auntie Pam, and it went to Joe the Butcher, and it went to this, but all the way down the line until it got to the other farm. That's why they want the public to register birds.
Yeah, and plus also then they
do you see how it now fits together?
Yeah, they also know where the chickens are, who owns them. They can control the food supply, target them, and also make it unaffordable for people to have their own chickens. And just on the eggs is a basic protein, incredibly healthy, cheap source of nutrition. So if you're going to destroy the food supply, you've got to make sure you target the eggs as well.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen this across. I've got a friend in America who's got a big farm, and they've got the same issue over there. They got rid of 100 million birds. Just their egg prices went from very similar to ours, being worth kind of $1.50 for 6 eggs. They're now worth $1 each. That's what they're working against, and fighting in stores because they just physically can't get them. And that's what we're now starting to see here. I'll tell you this little story. I had a guy phone the other day, and he said to me, Mark, is there any chance you can supply me some eggs? And I said, well, maybe a box, because I just can't get the amount in supply anymore. He said, I'm looking for 50 boxes. They've got a big wedding catering job coming up and needed 50 boxes of eggs. He phoned 27 farms over 2 days and could not get the eggs.
Wow.
That just goes to show what we're up against. And, what the public are not starting to understand yet is how much food now is being imported as a result of what's going on. That doesn't work. We know under the 2030 agenda, there's no planes, no boats, no trains. Yep. Where's the food going to come from? Well, it simply isn't. It's as simple as that. It's not going to. And if you're lacking protein and someone says to you, here's a beautiful burger that's made from, maggots or whatever it might be, it will do you the world of good because it's full of protein, not telling you about all the chemicals that are in it that we can't cook out. That's where, it's starting to see the whole system is so messed up, so corrupt. It's untrue.
Yep. And then the climate bill that's got its next reading in July, where we can't bring stuff into the country anymore if it has a high carbon footprint, which means that we'll reduce the food supply coming in from abroad.
Of course it will.
Yep.
We all know that carbon dioxide is a terrible thing, and I'm guessing, and we're of similar age. I don't know what age you are. I'm 57. For me, when I went to school, carbon was the gas of life. And we were taught, when we did chemistry, it was a big thing. What we were taught about was the photosynthesis and how it all works. If we have more carbon dioxide, we have more food on the planet because the trees react to it, the vegetation reacts to it, the crops react to it. So, you have to ask. I genuinely ask this question a lot. And is it that they genuinely believe that's true? Or are they just trying to find a solution to tax us and that they know deep down they can produce all the carbon dioxide they need through factory farming, or that they can, produce through coal-fired power stations out in China to up the amount, to tell us it's getting worse, to tax us more, to make us believe...
I think it's worse than that. I think it's worse. So there are people who just believe the carbon dioxide is bad for us. They just believe mantra because they've never questioned it. Never, they're the ones that rolled their sleeves up and lined up to have umpteen booster shots a day, right? Many of them. They don't question the Guardian. The Guardian and the BBC they give us the truth, the absolute truth. And then there are people, white supremacists, racist, transphobic, people like me, tinfoil hat, your bowler hat is made of tin, I bet, right?
It is, yeah.
Right? Who don't believe that. Climate deniers, we deny there's a climate. What do you know about the climate? You're a bloody farmer. What do you know about photosynthesis and carbon dioxide, right? But it's actually worse. So you will know, I'm sure, that the WEF, they want the governments to have a biometric digital ID with a wallet and a carbon tracker.
Yeah.
And the wallet will have the CBDC so they can track all our purposes. And the thing about carbon dioxide, like you said, it is the gas of life. It's a great proxy for human activity.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important. They can use it to restrict our liberties and our freedoms because of climate.
Yeah.
And Martin, interestingly, sorry, I'm going to have a little rant here, right? And then I'll come back to you.
You go for it.
Right? Okay? Interestingly, cow farts are really bad for the planet, but making munitions, mining for metals, making munitions, sending them across the planet to drop on people in foreign lands, that's carbon neutral, apparently.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, because they've offset that against planting some trees somewhere.
No, trees are bad for the planet. We need special machines that suck in the carbon.
They're now on about building factories to take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, aren't they? I mean, you just couldn't write this stuff.
Just absolute nonsense. It all falls apart, right? But let's go to organic, because we're going to talk a bit about solutions. So what's happening with the organic farmers and the chemical-free farmers?
Yeah, so let me tell you what's happening as I'm travelling around the country. So one of the things I do at every town we go to, and I get my partner to document this, so we ask one question of the audience. If you could, would you buy, directly or indirectly, chemical-free food direct from a farmer? So it might be that the farmer supplies to the public. It might be they supply a farm shop. It might be they supply a veg box scheme, whatever. Would you buy it? 100%, end to end of the country, everyone without fail has said yes. We've never had anyone put their hand down, okay? Now, that says to me there's a demand for what we're talking about. Now, my quest on this journey is to get that message to the farmers. So if you take, for instance, Farmers to Action as a body of farmers that are taking action against the government and what's going on, I work quite closely with them. For me, I keep posting those pictures that my partner's taking in the rooms full of people on every WhatsApp group that I belong to with farmers, and keep saying, look, we're in Ledbury, 50 people. We're in Thetford, 300 people. We're in Burnley, 200 people. We're in this town, 200 people, wherever it might be across the country. So what we're then seeing is the farmer saying, okay, we get the point, Mark, you want organic, chemical-free food. How do we supply these people? So we've got the organic people already in the industry, the chemical-free growers, but we're also now starting to see the other farmers, which are traditional agri-farmers, now starting to look for different solutions that they can get involved in producing food for the public, not the supermarkets. I'll give you an idea here. We come from Suffolk and East Anglia. In Suffolk, we do not produce any food. And you go, Mark, that's ridiculous. The fields are full of food. So for us, we produce wheat, barley, sugar beet, oats, maize, and rapeseed. All things that go into production of food, not direct food. No vegetables, no meat, no dairy. So everything is about going into the system that supplies into supermarket supply. Okay? Now, bear in mind that East Anglia is a huge area. What we're seeing is that complete area is only down for those things. We don't grow any food. So what we're now starting to see is, as a lot of the older farmers are retiring, selling up their farms, parts of the farms are going off to people now like you and I concerned about the food supply chain that are buying up small pockets of land, 5, 10, 50, 100 acres. They're then getting the community involved in producing food on those sites. Now, I'll give you a classic little example of a great farm we went to down in Glastonbury called Crops Not Shops. And Crops Not Shops have a philosophy where they have about 20 people live on the farm. So their first food, what they produce, goes to feed the family of the unit on the farm. The second lot goes to feed the local people that are, let's say, hard up for food or hard up for money, single parents, disabled people, whatever it might be. And then everything thereafter is sold to raise funds and will go into the food supply chain. I love that concept because it puts the right people first. So
Wow.
What we're seeing is, and we're seeing this across the country, that the new farmers that are coming into farming are growing a lot more food, and I mean a lot more food. If you take someone like, in East Anglia where we are, they're producing 4 tonne an acre of what they deem as food, wheat or barley. For me, I can produce 30 to 40 tonne of vegetables per acre. That's the difference. If we go back to growing real food, we don't need as much land. And people say, oh my God, we're going to lose, we can't continue like this. We're in the position we're losing land to solar, we're losing land to building. It doesn't actually matter. We could have 20% of the land we have now in use. But what we do need to do is produce what we really need.
Right.
Food.
And this is the message that you're giving out on your tour, that this is the problem, this is how bad it's getting, this is what we need to do. And then I'll have the links to your website at thebowlerhatfarmer.com, and people can find out, and also your X profile and your YouTube channel.
Yeah, I mean,
Please carry on.
So just to follow on from that, so we're now getting all these farmers to register themselves on foodfindershub.org, and that's a site we've set up. The public have funded it via kind donations, via GoFundMe and so forth. And we've built this site, and the site allows farmers to advertise who they are, where they are, what they do, and the public to be able to find them farmers and where they are, what they do. So, and there's lots of different aspects coming onto that platform, but the basics is that you'll be able to find locally produced food direct to your door. And that's what we need to get back to, come away from the supermarkets and get more involved again with farming.
Yeah, we need to buy direct from the farmers, and that cuts out the supermarkets and the big agribusiness, and it supports local communities and builds local ties. It gets us connected to the community and to the earth and all of that, right? And then it's important for us to spread the word so that other people know about this, because the mainstream media aren't covering this at all. They're not telling us. I mean, I was shocked when you said to me at the beginning there's 70% less available food.
72% less now than what was in the pandemic, yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. Mark, is there anything else you want? I do want to have another conversation with you, because there's another solution that I want to offer you, and that I want the word spread. It will support the farmers, but it will support everybody else as well, right? So we'll have a conversation about that. Is there anything else you want to say before we finish up on this one?
No, it's been great, because for me, we're traveling the country. My partner Gloria and I, we're traveling the country. The thing for me is for people to turn up at these events. So if people want to know a bit more about that, go to thebowlerhatfarmer.com, click on the tour button, you'll see where we are. We're literally travelling Land's End to John O'Groats. We were in Land's End this weekend, and we're now working our way back up. And we've got a bit of a squiggle to do around the middle of the country and drop back down south again before we head off to John O'Groats for the end of September. It's a 6-month tour, and for us, we're meeting some amazing awake people. And the kindness of people has been surreal. You know, everywhere we go to stay, everyone's putting us up. They're all wanting us to be, you know, going to stay with them and doing the talks in their town. So people are waking up on vast amounts.
Absolutely, and more, and I'm noticing that, and I think it's going to grow and grow and grow. And there's a movement towards decentralization. And I think you are and the other people who are involved in Food Finders Hub and similar are at the vanguard of that. So more power to your elbow. So do check this out. I look forward to coming to one of your talks myself. And please share and spread this video far and wide, because without food, there is no life. No farmers, no food.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.